Hi everyone, this is Professor Mackey and I'd like to welcome you to this presentation on literary analysis and interpretation. Right now I want you to take a moment and think about how analyzing and interpreting are different from summarizing. So go ahead and pause the slide and take a moment to think about this. When you summarize something, you're attempting to capture the essence of what the author said. So with a summary, you're sticking to the facts that are presented to you within a text. When you analyze or interpret something, you are using your own unique perspective to come up with a judgment. So analysis and interpretation, when we're talking about literature, there can be many, many different answers. There's not one single correct answer when it comes to analysis and interpretation. And when we're talking about literary analysis and interpretation, oftentimes we're talking about what we personally think is the deeper meaning of a story. So a story has a meaning that is on the surface, which is what happens in the plot, and then a deeper message and underlying meaning that you are being asked to interpret. Analysis and interpretation are sometimes used interchangeably when we're talking about literature, but they actually have two different meanings. So when you hear the word analysis, think that you are breaking something down into smaller pieces with the goal of explaining how each piece functions. When you interpret something, you're putting all these parts together to make an argument. In the case of literary analysis, you're making an argument about the deeper meaning of a story. I want you to take a moment and see if you can define these common points of literary analysis: symbol, metaphor, and connotation. There are many different terms in literary analysis that you can use to deepen your argument, but here are a few common ones that people like to analyze. So a symbol, when we talk about symbols, we're talking about a tangible physical object that represents an abstract idea. So for example, an evergreen tree, it never loses its leaves, and sometimes it can be seen as a symbol of life and how life endures. A metaphor is similar to a symbol, but not the same thing. Metaphor is a figurative language. It links unlike things with the purpose of painting a unique picture in the reader's minds. So, for example, a metaphor is a sea of knowledge. We don't mean an actual ocean of knowledge, we just mean a vast amount of knowledge. So that's one example of a metaphor. Or when we say heart of gold, we don't literally mean a heart of gold. We mean somebody that has a good heart, whose heart is valuable. So metaphors are not to be taken literally. Connotation is a really useful term for literary analysis, and the dictionary definition is what the word actually means. That's denotation. Connotation is the associations that come with something. So connotation is a range of emotional associations that a word or a phrase suggests. And this, again, a word like blue, obviously it's a color, but it also can suggest sadness. So connotations are the suggestions that certain words may have. When you write your literary analysis and interpretation essay, there are three main things that you're going to need to do in this essay. You're going to have a thesis. Your thesis is going to be what the deeper meaning of the story is. And remember, the thesis is often the last sentence in your introduction paragraph. You have to have supporting reasons within your body paragraph. So you have to be able to support your thesis with some reasons, and your supporting reasons are going to come in your analysis of the specific elements of a particular story. And then third, and this is related to your supporting reasons, is your direct quotations. So you need to actually show the reader support for your reasons in the form of direct quotation. So just as when you're analyzing an article, when you're analyzing literature, you also have to include those direct quotations as evidence for your supporting reasons. Whenever you introduce direct quotations, remember you want to set up your quotations. You don't want to just drop them in the paper, just as you wouldn't tack up a great painting on a wall. You would put it in a frame and display it proudly. So when you have a direct quotation in your essay, you want to set it up. So a frame surrounds and highlights a direct quotation or any specific reference to a text. At the top of the frame, you're going to set up the quotation by explaining what is happening in the story. So, for example, you might give a little bit of a plot summary. You might say what a character is doing. You might introduce the character if the character is speaking. And then you get into your direct quotation. Your direct quotation can be any line in the story as long as it supports your point. Usually, when you include a direct quotation, it should be about 1 to 3 lines in your paper. You don't want to go too much more than 4 lines because then you're going to be over quoting. Generally speaking, you want to have at least 1 or 2 direct quotations within each body paragraph because, again, that is the support for your points in each body paragraph. And then the bottom of the frame, you're going to close it out with a parenthetical citation. In the case of a story that is printed out or a text, you're just going to put the number in parentheses. You don't have to put page or PG or anything like that, just the number itself for the parenthetical citation. I want you to take a moment, pause this presentation, and reference the story that you've been assigned to analyze, and see if you can select a short quotation from the story to frame. So remember, you want to open the frame by setting up the quotation, and then close the frame by including the parenthetical citation, which is the page number of the quotation. So here's an example of how you might set up a quotation in a short story that you're analyzing. So the setup references what the characters are doing at the time before it gets into the quotation. So for example, when Osman first moved to Maine, he struggled with his loneliness. Giorgio, that's the author, writes, quote, "The solitude unnerved him." And then the closing of the frame is 157 period, so that's the page number. So you can't just drop this quotation, "the solitude unnerved him," in without telling your reader what's going on in the story and setting it up. So remember, assume that your reader has not read the story, so you do need to set up quotations and explain the background of what's happening in the story before you go into the quotation. And again, your quotations are supposed to be proving a point. So it's not enough to set up the quotation and give your parenthetical citation. You also have to connect the quotation to your larger point. So after you properly frame that quotation, make sure that you are in fact explaining how it connects to your larger point. So a quick recap on the main points that we covered today in this quick lesson. When you write a literary interpretation and analysis paper, you need a thesis statement, and that is your argument, what the deeper meaning of the story is. And again, your thesis statement is the last sentence in your introduction paragraph. Each body paragraph should have a main reason that supports your thesis, and you're going to analyze specific elements of the story. And each body paragraph should have at least one direct quotation that ties into your supporting reasons. Congratulations, you made it through the presentation. I hope that this has been helpful in giving you a better understanding of how to write a literary analysis and interpretation paper.